I'm not seeing MAMAPONYA. Huh?
Oh.
Hi. Hi. Okay,
Can
cool.
you see me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Can we start?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, hi. Thank you very much for joining us at the Encounters Film Festival. And my name is XOLISWA, SITHOLE. I will be speaking to some fabulous, fantastic, talented filmmakers, women, and we are going to look at exploring boundaries, opportunities, issues around representation. So to make a quick intro, we have ASHLEIGH da Silva here. She's the director of a fabulous film called Blend. We've got MAMAPONYA, MOTSAI, is it MOTSAI? MOTSAI. I wrote it wrong, forgive me. MOTSAI, and she is a fabulous filmmaker, and she made a documentary called ENNIE. And then we've got Yolanda M, because we've got two Yolandas, so she suggested we call her Yolanda M. And she's a filmmaker who directed the documentary RUMBA in the Jungle. And then we have another Yolanda. She said she should be called Yolanda O, and she is at the NFVF, very important person who is working in development with filmmakers, working in documentary, and she will also give the funder's perspective and how she works with filmmakers, etc., etc. So if we may please kick off, as I've said, my name is XOLISWA, SITHOLE, and ASHLEIGH, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm ASHLEIGH da Silva. I made the film Blend, as XOLISWA said. For those who haven't seen it, it's a 15-minute film about an interracial couple who, in this specific scenario, he was adopted by a white family, and with maintaining his Xhosa roots, she converts, or not converts, but she joins, tries to join with his tradition, has a traditional wedding, and she also has a makoti ceremony as part of the wedding festivities. Just in terms of my background, I studied at UCT. I did an undergrad in film studies, and then I did an honors degree as well. And that's sort of where my journey of documentary really began, because I sort of, I specified in the documentary arts course that they offer there, and that's where I made my first short documentary, which was about a fine artist called Lady Scully. So that was my first film, and this is my second.
Fabulous. MAMAPONYA, please, my dear, will you please be so kind as to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is MAMAPONYA, and I made ENNIE. It's actually my first film, it's a film about the lady who used to take care of my grandfather. So ENNIE in the film, the old man in the film, if you've watched it, is my grandfather. Jacob is my uncle. And I made the film just because I feel like a lot of times we have people around us, like domestic workers or not, and we feel like we know their stories, but we don't. And I felt like I wanted to get a chance to actually have her tell her story, because there were so many family rumors and whatnot. So that was my motivation behind that. But my background is I am a journalist, so I tell different stories in different ways in my daily life. So I'm a journalist, and yeah, I love telling stories, and I love particularly telling stories of women whose voices I never heard in the media.
Yolanda.
Yeah.
MOGATUSI.
MOGATUSI.
Forgive me.
MOGATUSI, yeah, with that G. That's one a G. Hi everyone, my name is Yolanda KEABETSWE. I am a storyteller, director, producer, writer. Yeah, I've worked in television and in film. I love creating stories with a very strong female protagonist. I love making stories about hair. With some of the kind of ECD work that I do, I very much love work that empowers kids, not just educates them, but empowers them and kind of makes them feel like, you know, I can do this. My film that's at the festival is called RUMBA in the Jungle. It's my very first documentary. It's a dance documentary. I'm a dancer myself. And yeah, it's one of the most educational films I've ever done. And yeah, I think that's me in a nutshell.
Yolanda, the other Yolanda, she said she wants to be called Yolanda O from the National Film and Video Foundation, and we are honored to have her here. Please introduce yourself, Yolanda.
My name is Yolanda NCOKOTWANA. I work as a production and development manager at the National Film and Video Foundation. As part of my job, I oversee the funding of all documentaries at the National Film and Video Foundation, as well as work with all the writers and filmmakers as part of their development. So I consult throughout the development process. I enjoy what I do. My background is I studied film at the Tshwane University of Technology, and then I went into broadcasting, spent a lot of time in broadcasting until I made my transition into here, and I'm passionate about women issues.
Fabulous, fabulous. Okay, I am going to kickstart this with you, Yolanda, if we can have you on. In terms of, because I'm, you know me and women, and I make women's films, really to talk a bit about where you are positioned at the NFVF, what are the opportunities for women and the representation, but also what are the barriers that women face? Because some of us, I tried to do a little study myself where I looked at funding KZN Film Commission and the NFVF about 3 years ago, and I was looking at not how many women are funded, how much money is going to women. Because it doesn't help to say we funded 100 people, but 50 of them were women. For me, it's like, no, how much money, how much of that budget have you given to women? Because we know that this industry, it's about, it's based on patronage. It still is. It's paternalistic. So what are the opportunities and what are the barriers in terms of women being represented in the industry by the NFVF, for instance?
Okay, that's a loaded question. I think, it starts off, I think from where we stand, it starts off with, application. I think women have to apply, as in like they have to get through the door and come in, because then that's where we meet them. And I think, documentary is one of the genres that I think is much more fairer to women than narrative. There seems to be more opportunities and I think it's because of the scale is always smaller. But from a funder point of view, I think we've got like a lot of systems that we try and put in place to ensure that women are taken care of, like even the way, and I think obviously we evaluate stories when we come across them, but there's always an added advantage in being a woman. So we try and ensure that we push the agenda of women, and we're quite transparent about it. And I think, and that's part of us leveling the playing field, is to try and prioritize women in most of our programming and in all our funding programs. Like we've got other programs like the EBFTF, which are not necessarily documentaries, and we've got other programs like the Women Filmmaker Initiatives that are geared towards filmmakers that are of female. But from a documentary point of view, I think obviously the the priority is when a female story comes in, we try and look at the story, but also look at the team that is working, right? Because it's one thing to have the woman being the applicant, but who is she employing? Are the key creatives also women as well? Because I think it's not, like you were saying, it's not just about who gets the funding, it's where that money goes. So it becomes very imperative that we get women across the key creatives, and that women are in charge with it, that they are the ones that are making the editorial decisions. So the NFVF is always trying to find spaces where we can partner with women, and we do it in very different, I think, in different areas. And I think for me, if you ask where are the barriers, I think it even starts with the application. I think the observations that we've made is that even with the people that do apply at the NFVF, you find that women are not applying as much. It's always men that are applying the most. And maybe, I don't know, because I think maybe men are just much more aggressive in them finding money. So I think if it's about where do we solve it, it's about us also having the confidence to say, you know what, I will apply, and also making a conscious decision to say, when I am the lead applicant or I'm the producer, I'll ensure that my team is also female.
One last thing that you didn't mention is actually the success of the women slate programs that you initiated a couple of years ago, and how that is actually helping throughout, like maybe for 3 years, a woman can actually be sustainable, a female production company that is. How successful has been that women slate project? And then there's the other short one where women as well are getting that. How successful has that been?
I think, I mean, with the female slate, what has happened with that, it has unearthed talent. The writers and the directors that came from that program, who had been working in the industry for a while but had never been given an opportunity to almost direct their own film, they've now moved from the program to direct their own films and their own feature films. They've moved on to head their own production houses and to write for television. So the success that has come from there is we've found women who've been able to sort of show the industry that this is my skill and this is my talent, and be taken seriously. But also in return, you also find women, because they've been given the opportunity, they saw back, they give that opportunity back to other women. And with the documentary slate that we currently have, I think it's also the 2 documentary slates that we have. The leaders are women, the production houses fully owned slates that we currently have. They are the leaders in the production. For instance, the latest one that we've just received, they have like an entire strategy of ensuring that everyone that is in the key creative role is a woman, and they're actually going out to search other women to ensure that from researcher, director, cinematographer, it's actually women. So it's almost like they are extending the work.
Okay, for purposes of time, I'm just going to ask you one question, because one of the things that I also can't stand as a woman is that when I get a job, then I'm asked to go and find other women to partner with. But that same premise does not apply to men. And in as much as I tell them in the meetings that actually I've achieved much more than most men have, are you holding men accountable to the same standards that you are holding women accountable? Please, quick one.
Yes.
So are men also being asked to have key creatives that are women? Because as I've explained, that's like I get a contract, then I am asked, why don't you partner with so-and-so? And I'm like, no, I will, this is my project, I want to do it, but of course I'll employ women.
I think the premise is the same. We encourage everyone to try and hire women as much as possible, whether you're a male or not. And I'll make an example with one of the EBF projects that we got last year, the applicant that got it was a male. And we said, okay, then you have to go and find a mentor. And we made sure that the mentor that he found was actually a woman. Like, so he found a woman who's going to mentor the entire production. So it is something that we expect from everyone, not just females, but it's also something that I think from a funder point of view, it also has to be organic as well. It cannot be forced. And I think this is when then the collaboration with filmmakers and producers becomes very important, because it can't be a thing where you only do it because we expect you. It has to get to a point where you do it because it's important and you understand the value in doing it.
Okay, EBM, quick one. People who don't know what EBM means.
EBFTF, it's Black, it's Emerging Black Filmmakers. Okay.
Ashley, thank you so much. We'll come back to you later. Ashley, please tell us how, was what I found very interesting about your film was how I told you that I liked the female character and you said people actually relate to the guy. I like the female character in the sense that she found a way of assimilating into the man's Xhosa culture. And some people find that totally abhorrent. But at the same time, if I married a Jewish man, because you know Judaism runs through the woman and many women convert to Judaism, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you've got this, and I think it's just an issue of race. So you got this white woman who marries the black guy, and she initiates herself into that because she talks about the children and how when her children grow up, they should actually identify with the culture that she's married into. Please speak to that.
Well, the first thing is they were dating for, I think it's, I do say it in the film, but they were dating for 12 years. So since they were in high school. So what I also found so interesting about them as a couple in general is they've grown so much as he's also been growing as an individual within his own, trying to connect to his culture, because he didn't grow up specifically in a Xhosa house because he was adopted. So it's just very interesting how he's going on a journey and she's going on the same journey with him. I forgot what I wanted to say now. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
No, it's fine.
Sorry, but she sorry, I'm losing my train of thought completely. I'm getting so nervous.
No, it's okay. I'll help you. Don't get nervous. I loved your film. I loved the woman character in terms of her representation as a woman and as a white woman who was willing to actually learn and understand about the Xhosa culture. And you say that actually people relate to the guy more than they relate to her.
Yes, sorry. That's the point I was getting to. So her going along with him and doing all these things, that's what I found so interesting, is it goes beyond just race and it goes beyond the culture clash, which I did try to show in some capacity, because at the end of the day, I kind of did want this to be what I dub a romantic documentary. It's a love story, like above all. And these things are sort of just nuanced within the love story. And her infiltrating herself, it was very interesting because she made this decision out of her own. At the end of the day, it's not something that was included in the film, but it was actually optional for her. She didn't have to make this decision because, as you say, it sometimes is sort of abhorrent and sort of frowned upon. But she made this decision to do this because she was thinking about the future, and she kind of wanted to put herself into a space where she didn't want, as it says in the film, she didn't want other people to inform her kids and her future. And also I just feel like if you're going to marry someone, you kind of should understand their life and you should try and infiltrate their culture as much as possible. So it's very admirable that she did that. Like that's actually, I admire her a lot because, as you say, I don't think a lot of people will do these things to convert to whatever the scenario is, religion or culture. It's a very big commitment, and I really commend that in her.
No, we will come back to the issues of representation and also what was the barrier in terms of you having that incredible access. You know what I mean? Even when she is throwing her marbles out of the court, when someone is talking to her and she doesn't like the way she's being spoken to. Because I, as a Black girl, I wouldn't have thrown that hissy fit that she threw. But then I'm like, you go, girl. MAMAPONYA, my dear, please, can you talk? You know what I loved about your film was it felt like an anthropological study of some sort. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And there was so much in the film, the cinema verite style, and there was something, a lot wasn't spoken in the film, but you got to really, really understand the film. Can you talk about the process and why you wanted to make something which was so anthropological and at the same time was a documentary, how you balanced that out? You are mute.
Yes, okay. I have it now. So as I mentioned in my intro, I have a background in journalism. And one of the first things you learn about storytelling in journalism is show, don't tell. If you give people and you paint a picture for them, they can make their own conclusions. You don't have to say, oh, this is this kind of situation. And I think that's really what I wanted to do. I just wanted to show the story and have people understand it for what they understand it, or tell or see what they want to see. Some people pick up different things, but that's what I wanted. And what you pick up says a lot about you as well. It says a lot about what you value in society and the things that disturb you in society. So the process going in was really just observe and watch her and watch and show her life. It was really a portrait. It was an attempt at a portrait of ENNIE.
Okay, and you also mentioned that it was a personal story. Can you just tell us in a short snippet? Because I want to cover quite a few things and people are asking questions. And can you tell us the background of the story itself?
Yeah, so it is a personal story. So ENNIE was the old man that ENNIE worked for, because he passed away. So the old man was my grandfather, and that's how I got to know ENNIE. And because they were in you know, when somebody has been part of, ENNIE had been part of the family for 2 years, and there were all these rumors about where she comes from, how many kids she has, and I was just like, no, man, let's just ask her. Let's talk to her. And also there was another incident which I think also made me a bit more aware of the issues that people who work in our homes face, where the lady who was working for my sister had to go back to Lesotho because her child was being abused. And it made me feel like often we have these people in our homes, but we don't know their stories and we don't know what they're carrying. And we expect them to show up and be happy every day, but we never recognize their story. Yeah.
No, I liked the fact that you gave agency to a person who, as you rightfully say, we don't know their stories. And it's like we don't want to know their stories. And this story was about this person, you know what I mean, in your family. Yolanda, I'm gonna come back. And what I'm going to do this is I'm gonna come back with what we're supposed to talk about. And I'm also going to bring questions in that people are asking. Yolanda, Rumba in the Jungle, please talk about that.
So as I mentioned, Rumba is my very first documentary film. Was supposed to be a very small project. Rumba in the Jungle had been kind of dormant or like not happening for a good 18 years. They were bringing it back, and then they asked my producer, Dominique, if she could like record the thing. And then we thought, oh, this is such a big deal. Like it's been, I remember watching Rumba in the Jungle as a child. I remember literally sitting out Saturdays like, this is what I'm doing, you know? And then it just disappeared. And we just kind of talked about it and we said, no, we need to make a moment out of this. And we're both filmmakers and we wanted to make Indeed. We wanted to kind of like, you know, give a bit more gravitas to the moment instead of just kind of record it.
You know what I loved about that film? After I finished watching that film, I actually Googled when the next Rumba in the Jungle is, because I actually want to go. Yes, if they're having it next year, I was like, I'm going to Sun City. But also, you know what I absolutely loved about your film was how you managed to capture the dreams of children. And you captured that so well. I mean, I know of the woman who has the school where she teaches kids how to dance, and it's kids from the poor communities. And how they are so professional. And there was a woman whose child is so good, who's gone to France, who's gone where. And she said, you know what, I am poor. I went to Waterfall Estate and I knocked on each and every door, raising money for my child so that I could take my child to the competition. And I said to myself, that is fighting for your child. Can you speak about how, I mean, for me, I was just enthralled at these children from poor backgrounds, but who are queens and kings, and once they start dancing. Tell me the process of finding these kids.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like the dance world gave itself to that. I mean, I dance, as I said, but it's very much socially. So this whole world, this competitive world is like a whole other world. These 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds are putting on makeup. They're learning about etiquette. Like, it's a serious thing. I mean, when we that first night, the gala night, not the first night, the gala night, we were told, okay, you guys are media. Please try to dress decently. Don't come here with your jeans and whatnot. We were like, whoa. So that's like the whole just like air about the competition is very much, you have to be so well groomed, put on your best dress, makeup and all of that. And these kids are in that world and it's so competitive. And I think, I don't know, actually the kids that we found are very talented kids. They've won a lot of their sections and stuff. And some of them were going up against each other. And the thing is, what I learned from making that film, both from the kids and from the champions in Tebogo and Michael, is that when you're so good at what you do, when you're at a high level in your game, it's so it's fine. It's easy to get up there, but to kind of stay up there is quite a tough thing. It's quite a tough thing because there's so much pressure on you to maintain this excellence. And so they're all driving for this excellence that sometimes seems so far-fetched or so unattainable, but there's so much pressure on just everyone who is reaching for this dream. As you mentioned it, that it's a heavy like little space to be in, and these kids are in there.
And you know what I liked about your film as well was the representation, because I as a feminist, really filmmaker, I am so clued on how women are represented. Not to say that they should always be represented as, sometimes it's what it is. You know what I mean? But I loved the balance of representation in your film. You know what I mean? It wasn't about who is the leader here, who's the victim here. What I saw, whether people won or not, I saw winners between the men and the women, because how we frame representation and content is very, very important as women. Can you speak to that? Is it something that you thought of, or that space just organically created that?
So we interviewed a lot of the big stars, the Slaviks who were there and everything else. But I'll tell you, the people who made the cut were the females, well, most of them, because they're the ones who had the story. They're the ones who, like Karina, she's kind of under Slavik's, shadow, and he's like this grand big dance star, and she's just like his partner. That's who she is, she's partner. But I was like, no, she's got a lot to say, and she was great on camera and all of that. Tebogo has a very interesting story. I mean, she's been through quite a bit, and I didn't know half the stuff. And I also thought someone like Michael was quite an interesting one. Also being like a white South African male, and you think sometimes all of this is imposed on, he already has all of the stuff. But hearing his story and how he struggled, also struggling as a male who likes dancing and who has this dream, and at a point where the country just indeed could not support it. I thought he had a really interesting story as well, and with where he is now and the transition of his kind of stardom. And yeah, so we were very fortunate to be able to extract some of those stories out of everyone.
Okay, Ashley, can you please speak to how earlier on when I was speaking to you, you mentioned that it was interesting that I took to the female character in your story because that's not the reaction of most people. Can you speak to that? Because really, we need to unpack, other than talking about how wonderful your films are, but actually as filmmakers, you go in, you've got a certain thought process, you want to bring out something. What has been the reaction of the guy who marries the white woman in your film?
Yes, well, just to speak for him, I think he's just maybe more of a natural. He's just more of a sort of public speaker, natural born. He's very good in front of the camera. So I just think in that way, he engaged a little bit better with the camera. But I think from her perspective, I think in my earlier cuts, it maybe was a bit difficult because we see that sort of moment where she has a bit of a, as you said, throw her marbles out the cot. She has a bit of a moment, you know, it leads people to maybe think, oh, she's being difficult. But she was just, it was just a kind of a build-up of the moment. And I think the reason because she was a little bit like hesitant about actually leaving that part in the film, because obviously it's not a nice thing to see of yourself, but I was quite sort of adamant to leave it in because it's a poignant moment in the film where it sort of creates that tension and shows that things are not always smooth sailing. There are difficult moments. As I say, there's culture clash. And there's a little bit of background to that lady who was sort of telling her to, who she was shouting at. She was sort of telling her to put her headscarf lower down to be sort of more submissive. And she wasn't understanding why she was telling her that. And so she just got a little bit, as you can see, a little bit irritated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's maybe why. That's sort of why I just say from that perspective, because he's just maybe more of a natural speaker on camera. But I think there's some moments of her that really I think she really came alive. Like one of my favorite parts, and I edited the film myself, and every time I even watch this section, I get a little bit, get those goosebump feelings. At the end, when she's at the beach and she speaks about what he's brought to her life, every time I just love that part because it's just very authentic. And again, this is not exactly a film obviously about just a woman, it's obviously about a couple, but I was very interested in this idea of how they complement each other on the basis of themselves as people, because at the end of the day, that's what makes this relationship work, is them.
Out of curiosity, my dear, did the guy pay lobola to the white family? That didn't come up, although she is married in a traditional, you see in the traditional Xhosa outfit. Did the family come to the table? Because the family, she hid it for a long time. And did he pay lobola to the girl's family?
No, he didn't in the end. I know he makes a joke about it, but he didn't.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, no, he didn't.
Okay, MAMAPONYA, my dear, I'm trying to cover so much ground, so forgive me if I seem hurried, but I just think that, this is such an exciting moment and we still have to cover other things. MAMAPONYA, your main character, Annie, she's got a quiet strength. At first, you think she's a pushover, but actually she isn't a pushover. And I like the auntie in the background saying, we must go and pay lobola for Annie because Annie has been a good wife. But Annie, what was interesting, she rebuffed the advances of the father, and she is taking her time with Jacob. How, apart from it being cinema verite, but how did you want to frame her? And do you feel like you were successful in terms of how you wanted to show your protagonist?
I think so, because my framing of her was a woman who has hard choices to make, which is something we all find ourselves in different ways. I mean, Annie's options are struggle as a single mother on your own, or maybe marry into this family and get a little help, even though the guy isn't that great. So I think that's what I just wanted to do, to show a woman in a very real economic situation. Yeah.
You know, the other question that I'm going to ask before I get to Yolanda, because then this is when the funding kicks in. For your passion, all of you, because I know that when I broke into the film industry, my first documentary, I started with my own money. And I'm a firm believer in first-time filmmakers not being given money. And I've been criticized for that because I think filmmaking is so difficult. And what we really want to nurture and foster are people who are going to stay and grow in the industry. And I think that you need to prove yourself, and correct me if I'm wrong, correct me, but that has always been my take. My first documentary, I started with my own money, then eventually I got funding later. It wasn't from the NFVF, but because I was so passionate about it, I made it happen. How far do you go as a filmmaker? Maybe not being able to pay rent, maybe not being able to maybe your cell phone gets cut off because you actually don't have money, but there is this thing that you need. How far do you go? You can continue, my dear. MAMAPONYA, you can continue.
For me, it's as far as you need to go. Honestly, I know it's not always possible, but for me, if like for ENNIE, I like Ashley, I was the camera person, I was the producer, I was the director, I was the editor. And for me, I feel like when you are passionate about the stories that must be told, it's almost like it's second nature to just get up and do what you have to do. You know, you're not going to sit and be like, oh, I didn't get the money. That means the story. Sometimes you can't do the story. Sometimes the story is so big, you can't do it without funding. But for me, you go as far as you need to go. And all that funding will catch up with you later.
Ashley?
Okay, so I'm probably a bit unfair in this statement because my first film was a student film, so that obviously there was no funding. But this film, I was very lucky to get funding from the NFVF, so that helped massively to help me get this film done. So, yeah.
But how far are you willing to go? How far are you willing to go?
Well, I mean, yeah, as saying again, I mean, I edited the film myself, so it's like finding those spare hours wherever you can to just finish the film. And I have to say this lockdown was surprisingly very helpful for me because it gave me a month to finally sit down and be like, I'm going to finish this film now, because I've been working on it for quite a long time, a bit longer than I'd like to admit at times. But I suppose that's the nature of how things go sometimes with documentary. It's just not always going to be in the time you think it's going to be. And you just have to sort of respect the process and make that time, because it really is just a matter of giving your own time.
Yolanda, Rumba in the Jungle. I'm sorry.
No, I'm finished.
Sorry. Yolanda, Rumba in the Jungle. I won't talk about the budget here, but I was shocked at how little, because I saw the film and I loved it. And the first thing I asked, how long did it take you? It took you 2 years, and the budget was so tiny. How did you stay passionate? Because it's a passionate film.
You know what? I am a very strong believer that film is a very collaborative art. It really is. And so in order to stretch that budget, we just had to ask a few favors from a few friends, but we also knew that this will become basically our first feature film. So we wanted to do this as well as we possibly could. And unfortunately, that didn't rely on the money. So it literally just relied on what it is that we could give. And then, of course, the help that we could source from the industry. I mean, we tried several times to apply for funding to various institutions, and we were just not successful until right up at the end, where we now got marketing and kind of like a distribution help. So that's been mega, mega helpful. Just in terms of things like transfers, I mean, like DCPs, creating a DCP. I was like, what? Why not learn it in film school? Like, what is DCP? Why do you have to pay so much money for it? Because now I'm told there are programs you can make it yourself at home and stuff. But then it was just ridiculous. It was stuff I did not know. And these costs just kept rising and such. And so I think the passion for me was after I did not know anything about this world, or at least the competitive side of the world. I didn't really know Tebogo or Michael that intimately or that closely. But after speaking to them and kind of hearing their stories, I was like, these are actually, like, this is an important story. Like, the world needs to hear this, you know? And they had kind of entrusted me with their story by being so generous in what they gave. And I felt like I have to do the story some justice. And also, yes, they got some of the accolades that they got, but and we're so good at saying how amazing people were after they've died and doing this tribute here and tribute there. And I thought it'd be amazing to just do something really amazing, and it might, as small as it was, but do it really, really well and just tell the story about these two people who became world champions. For me, it's like, it's tantamount to winning an Oscar or to being at the level of like a Trevor Noah where he is. And they are like that internationally, they really are. And all I know is like, yeah, she dances, but you know, I don't have any idea of how big really their achievements are. And so for me, I was like, the story needs to get out, that it's an important story. There's something about heritage here, South African heritage. There's something about our culture. There's so many things, so many kids grew up learning how to dance because at school in the Northwest, you know, and it's, the arts education is, for me, is very much about confidence building and so many other things. It's not just creating art. No, you're creating and you're building an individual and their self-esteem and their view into the world. So I really thought it was important. That's what carried me. That's what helped me push through. The story was important to bring.
Yolanda, in terms of the other Yolanda, in terms of creating opportunities, because we're talking about opportunities, and we are talking about how filmmakers, I mean, I know there's a film that I made for 9 years, and in the process, I even sold my car. And the film is done. It's probably one of the best films I've ever made. No one has ever seen it because I need about 400,000 for archive for the film. But it took me 9 years to make this film. I was in and out of Zimbabwe for 9 years. So you know, it's sitting there, but it will be finished. Yolanda, in terms of actually women now, they are pushing the boundaries. They are doing whatever it is that they can without money. And it's fantastic that the NFVF came to the table to help with the marketing. Was one of the things as well that we need to maybe discuss quickly is the fact that we shouldn't all be just relying on the NFVF. And we shouldn't be pissed off if the NFVF doesn't give us money, because the NFVF can only do so much. And also they're about development and all of that. When do you come in, Yolanda, when maybe you see that this is actually really a good film, it's got potential, but the person wants finishing money? How do you assess, you know, because obviously you can't give everybody money. How do you assess that?
On the question about when do we come in, I think we come in from the beginning. We come in at various stages, rather. I think obviously the people who come to us with a very great concept that still needs to be developed further. There are people who come to us in production, and there are people who may come to us in the very same position that you find yourself in, where you have the film, but then you need to clear archive. And then there's also when you come to us and your film is finished, and then you're just looking for marketing money. So it's various stages. And I think I think the only challenge becomes, I think in the past few years, you find that, and I mean, this is a good challenge to have also, is that there are more people that are looking for funding. There are more stories that are out there, but also in the same vein, this also means that not everyone gets funding. There's a lot of great stories that we don't get the opportunity to fund because, the kitty is limited. And we understand how difficult it is to fund documentaries in, not just in South Africa, in the entire continent. and those are just the challenges that we have, that they're not unique. But I think it's like we can only find so many stories, and that just becomes the unfortunate part about it, about the entire funding situation.
No. I do think that you try, actually. I'm one of those people who truly, truly believes that the government of South Africa is really, really trying, whether it's through the DTI scheme, the NFVF KwaZulu-Natal. It's just that actually our people like complaining, because if you look at other countries and what they fund and who they fund, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised that someone like Martin Scorsese, for his last film, this one, he couldn't get money from the studios. So Netflix gave him money. You'd be surprised that Attenborough, when he wanted to make Gandhi, he couldn't get money from the studios. So he had to sell his paintings to actually pay for the development of Gandhi. And these are people who are, so me now, even as a so-called experienced filmmaker, when I apply and not get money, and there's one project, I think this is the 5th year I'm being denied, and I keep trying. I don't get upset about it. It's a small pie going to many people, and elsewhere you pay for people to go to festivals. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And I actually really think you're doing great work. So no, I applaud you.
Can I add there?
Yes.
I actually think it's a great privilege that we have, that we even have funding institutions for films. It's a privilege. It's not a right,
Yes.
it's a grand privilege.
Yes,
And
yes.
should be a business. You can't just sit there and expect government to just pump money into each and every one of your projects. You've got to be a business person. You've got to figure out, how do I make this product now make money? So we can't really just always sit and kind of expect. It's great as a starting off and like a catapult, just like a springboard and such, but we can't just sit and expect them to give us the stuff.
So ladies, we want to talk about the barriers, right? The barriers that we face as women, because I do think, Yolanda did say that like more men apply, well, because men take readily to action, and a lot of it has to do with socialization in terms of how people are raised, and also a lot has to do with the boys' network as well, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that women, we don't earn as much money as men do for the same type of work. I know when people ask me to do something, they think that I am going to charge less. And by the way, I was charging less until recently. So that also has been my fault in terms of how, in fact, what changed it for me was when that guy wanted 25 million from Mnet for Idols, that white guy, when he said, okay, you want to kick me off? I want 25 million. I said, but XOLISWA, you've got 2 BAFTAs, you've got a Peabody, you've got a nomination for an international Emmy. Why are you earning this money that these people are giving you? So I learned a very big lesson from that guy. And now I'm like, nah, I'm not doing it, unless if I'm doing it as a favor. So the barriers that because I think we also impose those barriers, on ourselves as women, the barriers that we are facing in the industry, and how we can overcome those barriers to truly be where us and our work should be. Ashley, what are the barriers? What are the barriers for you? And by the way, Ashley, I, as a Black woman, I am not paid the same amount of money as a white woman as well. Because also we need to talk about those issues in terms of race, class, and gender. You know what I'm trying to say? And white women do get paid more. White women do actually have more work. Even sometimes when you work with a white woman and you're more experienced than they don't take to that. So how are you dealing with that? And how are you dealing with your privilege, even though you are young? Do you think about your privilege as a white woman?
To answer that part first, yes, all the time. Just to answer your first part of the question, I feel like what comes into my personal barrier, because I have this place of privilege, most of the barrier is what I inflict on myself, is my own self-doubt. And those are the things that actually probably bring me down the most. And my age. I also do tend to limit, you tend to sort of put yourself down a bit because you think I'm not experienced enough, I can't offer this, I'm not there yet. And I do feel like you kind of have to just get to a space where, just in terms of age specifically, I can do the job. So you must just sort of take it or leave it. Like, I mean, if I can just speak to my experience of making this film, partly why, as I said earlier, it took me so long to make is because I just inflicted so much self-doubt on myself. And I started overthinking what was sort of maybe expected to put in the film because, for example, I didn't include any sort of historical information, which is something that I thought about doing. I thought about at a stage also including other couples, so making 3 couples and making a slightly longer film. And all these things, they sort of play on your mind and you sort of put yourself down and don't get to the point you know you can get to. So now that it's done, I feel a bit better, but it took a while to get to this point. But to speak of privilege, in this scenario, like it's difficult to say just specifically for my film because I predominantly did the project myself. I just had I had a cinematographer who helped me, but it was basically my project. He just sort of shot for me. I sort of did everything else myself. So I didn't really work in a team in this scenario, but but I completely acknowledge the privilege and I completely take ownership for it. And I'm very conscious of giving other people opportunities. Obviously in this, as I say, I worked alone here mostly because of funding, because I'm very conscious of, if I can, I want to pay you. I know sometimes it's difficult and you have to ask people to work for free, but I really always try to put myself in a space where I can pay people because I want your time to be valued monetarily, because that's, a way that you can show someone you value their time. So that's one way that so as I say, I was lucky to get the funding for that reason, because I could actually do that for the
While
people.
While I have you there, and sweetheart, yes, we adore you. But I'm very big on feminism and race and gender. So yes, don't feel attacked, my darling. Not at all. Yeah, the woman who actually shoots all my documentaries from when she was from film school is Natalie Harhoff. And Natalie Harhoff trains a lot of Black women when she actually works. The last question I'm going to ask you while I have you there, do you feel the pressure of, there is a thinking that has been going on for quite some time where Black people are saying that our stories must be told by Black people? Do you feel the pressure as a white person that if you were to tell a Black story, you are actually appropriating a culture? Because it's a very, very, very real debate that is out there. And if you want to tell a Black story, how are you going to do it? Because I'll tell you what, there's this fantastic white filmmaker, Nikki, I think, and she is doing a quasi documentary, and she asked me to mentor her. And then she wanted to speak to people who were in Kwesi's life. And she was very clear about her privilege as a white girl. She was very clear about politics, intersectionality, but I loved the way she approached it, in terms of saying that I want to tell the story, but help me. I don't want to go in as a white woman and be a Miss Know-it-all, because this is a seriously Black feminist space. Yes. Do you feel the pressure when you want to develop certain stories that are predominantly Black, and how do you deal with that? I know you're young, you've just started, but I think it's important to think about that.
Yes. Well, if I can just say for myself, and the reason that I made this film is I was in an interracial relationship. So I sort of made this film from a perspective of I wanted to sort of address some of my own personal issues. My partner, or my ex-partner, was not Black, so he didn't have those experiences that Len and Monique have and what I was sort of infiltrating. But I sort of wanted to address some of those issues of things that I became conscious of with being with someone of a different race. Sort of when you go into a space that's very white, how does that make him feel? Is he comfortable? Is he not comfortable? also mentioning the ideas of voice and accent within the film. I was very interested in that as well, and how people treat Len differently because he supposedly speaks well. All these ideas I was very interested in. So to answer your question for sort of future projects, I don't know what my future projects will be, but if in any way, if it's sort of engaging with a story that has people of another race, I think I'm very conscious of, I can't inflict my own ideas on something I don't understand or I need to be educated about. It's just not, it just doesn't make sense as well.
No, because filmmaking and arts and culture, there's a very big movement around that because a lot of it is imperialist. So, and we need, and you are young people. I'm much older than you guys. So, you know what I mean? I'm doing other things now, but we need to think about these things. Yolanda, can you speak? Oh, shit. Oh, sorry. Let me
so before you go to Yolanda, can I just say on the white privilege issue and film, I remember during that one little episode where Makoti got angry, and I was quite offended, and I couldn't understand. Me
too. Yeah.
I was like, whoa, this is very intense when I was filming it.
I couldn't understand if I'm offended because I feel like, one, if I was in that position, the reaction to her speaking to an elder that way would have just been like, whoa. So I didn't understand if I was offended at her white privilege of being able to get away with that already.
To speak back. Yeah.
Yes.
But yes, you know, overall. Yes. Yeah, carry on. Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, if I was offended at the fact that is she really being disrespectful, or am I just a little bit ashamed of myself that many times when an elder treats me wrong, I let it slip. Yeah.
No. And you know what? It was very important for you to put that in there, by the way, because I was like, whoo, this one, But at the same time, Mina, I'm such a feminist. Even when I go home, Emakai, they just say, lo, would I sometimes, Mina, I will be, and I'm like, culture or no culture, I am not doing that. I am betraying, but there is obviously a way. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And so it was important you put that. I was a bit miffed about that, but overall, I commend that woman for trying. She won my heart because she was trying, because there are certain relationships, we know that as Black women or Black men or white people or whatever, whereby they are interracial. And we are like, manje, you know, our brother now has been totally appropriated to the other side. And it's like, this woman is just overdoing her hand in this. Where is your sense of culture, belonging? Do you know what I'm trying to say? So she won my heart in spite of that, you know.
The question I had at that moment was, if I did that and if I raised my voice like that, would I be given as much grace to be like, okay, no, she's like this? I think that's the moment, that's the question that I had. I was like, would I be given as much grace? And thinking about it, I was like, I don't know if I would have, you know. It's been a constant struggle all my life to even just honestly speak and to relay things honestly, you know, from where I'm standing. I imagine you had a hard time growing up, Kodisa, where you grew up, because it's like, I constantly.
No, but you know what? There is also the other aspect of it. If someone is coming from a certain culture, this cross-dating, as long as someone is trying, we cannot expect someone, you know what I mean? I cannot expect my brother's or my son's white wife to behave in a way in which I would behave, because we were raised differently. Is this person respecting where my son or my brother is coming from, and are they making an effort? Do you know what I'm trying to say? And I think that the representation of this, for me, you know, it worked. But getting to you now, Yolanda, I just want to ask, in terms of the barriers. What have been the barriers for you as a Black woman or creating this, you know what I mean, creating this piece of work, but mainly as a Black woman? What have been the barriers for you?
So as soon as you asked the question, I was trying to think. And I think I was trying to think because I've had to almost shrug off some of the stuff that has happened and some of the prejudices and I think for me, I found that it takes me, just people sometimes don't take you seriously. I don't know if that's also because I'm an actress as well. I don't know if that's because I also do my best to be nice and treat people, you know, like human beings and not just always extract work from them and such. So I don't know if it's all the feminine qualities or whatnot, but I think people just don't take you seriously. I'll have someone come and want to be mentored and such, and I'll give them my help. But then they'll get a white male producer and they'll listen to all of his advice. And sometimes his advice, I'm like, but I told you to do this. Why did you do that? And then obviously things are done and I'm like, but I told you not to do that. Why didn't you listen to me? And so I always constantly have to kind of, you know, figure out my way around these things. I once went to an interview for a soap we owned by, or rather produced by, a Black woman. Literally, she walked in, she saw me, and she gave the biggest sigh. Like, ugh. What a waste, like I'm going to waste another a good 20 minutes sitting in this interview. And before the interview even started, I was like, well, what did I do? I just came from like directing a sitcom, working on a sitcom and all of that. Like, I'm not here just like, I'm not, you know, trying my luck. Like I came here because I think I can do this, you know? And so it's taken such a while to kind of be taken seriously. And I think because also I try to be strategic in the way that I go about things, particularly in our industry. And so because you're not making this loud noise or you're not so-and-so and you're not like in that limelight, people are almost like, you're almost kind of, you know, dismissive. People can be very dismissive and such. And it takes me a long time to be like, no, look, buddy, I'm actually working on a film. I need this, and I need this like this. So you can't just, you know, run circles around me. And I'm nice, but when it comes to the work, just get the work done and get it delivered. So many stories of trying to hire Black creatives who will literally, you know, will work like they're doing you a favor. And then a big company down in Cape Town hires them and they're working on a Netflix show and I'm sure they give their all to there. And I'm like, but why couldn't you do that here? Like, is it not, you know?
I'm going to come to that. Hold that thought. MAMAPONYA, what have been the barriers for you?
So I'll mention two things. The first one is really me. I feel like I found myself having to unpack a lot of things, validating myself and allowing myself to feel like I deserve it, I am worthy, I can do it. Yolanda was talking about how they don't receive a lot of female applicants. And for me, that's also part of my story in just getting to a point where you're like, oh, you should apply for that. You are worthy of that. You can do that. And just getting to a mentality where I own even just the seeing myself as a filmmaker whose stories are good enough to get funding. And the second one for me is more practical. It's an issue of safety. For example, I'm doing a story. The film I'm working on now, based in Alex, and I can't always go there alone. I can't be there as much as I want to be there because there's so many aspects. You're walking around with a camera. You're a woman. Some of the stuff I have to do at night, but I can't be there at night alone, just roaming around. So that for me has been, I'm feeling it very much right now, how much a woman I am, just because I can't move the way a male would be able to move.
Okay, I'm now under pressure to ask questions. Okay, I'm gonna ask, who has really been supporting you as women? Is it women filmmakers? Is it men filmmakers who've been supporting you? And who have been the most influential women in your careers? And let us be quick because there are other stories. Ashley.
Oh gosh. I definitely look to female, I mean, I generally just identify more with female filmmakers and female stories overall. That'll always interest me more than a male story, just is what it is. But in terms of mentorship, I mean, most of the people that I actually sort of fed off and sent my film to for feedback were mostly women. I mean, maybe that's a good, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but women just know how to give you advice sternly, the truth, but also, honest but kind. I think that's just why I prefer working with women in general, because women are honest and kind, and they're just, I feel less intimidated as well being around women, because, which again, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I just do. I prefer working with women much more than men. I don't like, a lot of men can make you feel that inferior feeling we were discussing earlier, and I really hate that, especially when you're young.
Okay, Yolanda.
It come out a lot more.
Sorry, I keep cutting you. I'm so sorry. I keep cutting you. Let's be quick because people, I don't want this session. I want people to know everything. So I don't want the session to go when answers are not, you know what I mean? And questions. Yeah. So I'm sorry, guys, but it's question time, Q&A. Okay, Yolanda.
For me, my answer to that is I know they're out there, but I don't think I found them yet. These are mentors. But what I am finding is a lot more female collaborators. And yeah, I'm trying to be a mentor myself for upcoming filmmakers.
MAMAPONYA, do you find men, women, and who do you look up to, you know, that kind of thing?
For me, I have had both men and women, but I agree with Ashley that for some reason, I worked better and I found it more constructive with the women.
Okay, and someone also asked a question, which is a very important question. Are you as women obliged to tell women's stories? Because, you know, I have a distributor in America called Women Make Movies. And I'm trying to do a documentary on Mandela at the moment. And they're like, Oli, we love your work, but sorry, we don't, you're a woman filmmaker, but you are doing a male story. So we cannot distribute that. And fair enough. You know, because one of the things for me now, after I finished my Mandela story and another story I'm doing, I am not going to do any more work other than women's work. And my reason is that I'm a feminist and there is very little women's work out there with good budgets. Because when you say you want to do a film on Winnie Mandela, you will get probably a 10th. You know, last year, 100 years went past, there was no documentary on Mama Sisulu. And that's a travesty. Like, you know what I mean? Like box office stuff. So I am going to commit to doing women's work and I am not apologizing for that. Do you feel that you are under pressure as a woman to do women's work?
I'll jump in quick. So I've always wanted to tell a story exploring male masculinity. I've got 5 brothers and a dad, and just interesting observations there. However, I felt like my women-centered stories are the ones that have more kind of urgency, because as you say, there's not enough. And I feel like, no, you should see things from my perspective so you can understand some of the, you know, the bopping heads that we sometimes have. So I probably might still do that film, but yeah, I feel like the female leads are, and it's true, man, it's true. It comes from a real place also.
And Ashley?
I mean, I personally would probably, I prefer to tell women's stories, but I do think that women telling men's stories is a very important thing. If I can use a fiction example very quickly, the film Honey Boy that came out a little bit earlier this year, which is about Shia LaBeouf wrote the story about his father, and the whole film is directed by a woman. I haven't seen the film yet myself, but I'm quite a big fan of her work in documentary and now in fiction. And I think that it's a very masculine story, and it's like an abusive situation, but she's telling it from this very interesting perspective. And so hyper-masculine stories like that, I think it's great for when women can actually explore that, because I think it'll be told from a completely different perspective than a man would tell that exact same story, and maybe I don't want to say sensitivity, but it will come across with just a completely different lens on masculinity.
Okay, and Yolanda, there are 2 questions for you here. What kind of women's stories? Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to answer this one.
Say, talk.
Yeah.
I'm very it's just my vibe.
Fine,
I'm not going
fine.
to sit here and then, so forgive me. Yes.
No.
Yes,
fine,
my
fine.
dear.
So I wanted to say I don't feel it as an obligation. It's actually something that comes very naturally. It's a preference. And I remember a while ago, somebody was telling me about making this film about this man, and it was very interesting. And I was like, that's an interesting film, and you should probably go get somebody to do it, but it's not going to be me, because there's so many other women's stories that I feel like they need to be told. I'm not going to shift my focus to, no matter how great it is, I feel like this is where my heart is, and it's not even an obligation.
You know what? I want to tell men's stories, but as I said, I'm pretty much done, because the truth of the matter is that, you know what? There are so many stories about men. There is so much masculine narrative out there. There's so, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, please, I grew up listening to this. I grew up listening to this. I grew up conforming to this, to patriarchy. And now if I'm going to tell a man's story, I want to flip it, you know? So I'm with you. Yolanda, there's a question that has just come through. During this climate in particular, where COVID, LGBT, gender-based violence, LGBTQI violence, marginalized societies are actually having less of a voice because funding is drying up, and that is what actually ends up happening. Are you looking for specific, because I do think that there has to be a drive during this time to look for specific stories around these communities that are marginalized, especially women and children, LGBTIQ. Are you doing that at this present time?
I think we're always looking for new voices, and new voices means new stories. And one of the questions was, do we think that do women have the obligation to tell women's stories? I don't think women have got the obligation to tell women's stories, but I do think that there's a tone, and there's a tone when women tell women's stories. There's a way that those subjects are treated. There's a way that there's a POV that goes into those stories. And I think in this current climate, I find that it is stories that are current, but it's also, like, more than anything, it's new voices. It's finding experiences and stories that may have not been told before, that people will be able to relate to. It's also, I suppose, as us as people in the documentary space, being able to move with the times. And I think right about now you find that, documentaries that have an impact, stories that are changing people's lives, that those are the stories that tend to get more traction more than anything. And I think it's about moving with the times. And we're not looking for COVID stories, for instance. And I think because this time will pass, but we do need to reflect on the time that we are in. But I would hate that the next call that we get all COVID stories. I don't think we should be closed like that. I think we're always looking for new voices, and people should tell the stories that are important to them as much as they are important to the communities that they're trying to tell about, or to audiences. And I think in the independent space, you really, as the filmmaker, the story has to be important to you as well. And I think even as people who do get involved in the development process, especially when we work with women, we have to be able to understand what it is that the filmmaker is trying to say about that film, and be able to unearth that and assist.
I do think, however, having said that, documentary is about documenting a time and place in history. So it would be a travesty if a government institution does not set aside money to say that we need to at least document what is happening here and now, in as much as people documented AIDS stories during the time of the AIDS pandemic, in as much as people documented apartheid. This point in time is calamitous. What is going to happen is that are Black people going to have access to the vaccine when it comes out, or are we going to fight the way people fought for cheaper generic drugs during the time of HIV? Because people are saying vaccine, vaccine, but we know how this stuff works. So we know that this disease is killing Black people disproportionately. It doesn't matter where or even here. So my sister, I do think that while you are in there, maybe when you have your next meeting, you need to say, okay, guys, we are setting aside 2 million or whatever, or 2 cents. Can we set aside some kind of a documentation of this? Because where you people come in, which is very important, is that we can access your archive. So if my child, wants to research and they are grown up, your archive is accessible. They can say that, oh my God, this is actually what happened. So I do think that it's something that you should take up with the council in terms of a call, which is very sharp, which is very immediate, to actually find ways of documenting what is happening during this time. That's my 2 cents of worth.
I mean, I think we haven't revealed this, but we are currently working on a call for, and I suppose what I was, and just to put into context what I was saying, when I say in the next call, it's not that, we expect all the stories to come in to be about COVID, is that there is a special call that we are putting aside, and we will reveal it in the next month or so, that the stories and the theme, they're all around COVID. So there's a special call, there's funding that we're setting aside for just for COVID. But I think when that call comes and people can apply about stories that are very current now about anything around COVID, like about how our experiences of COVID, the communities of COVID. But I think also we do need the other stories that will come in. And I think that's, so it's not to say we're not finding COVID. We are finding COVID, but we also don't want it to be the only thing that we do find, because we also need to think, we know documentaries do take time. Yeah.
No, of course. And I hope that for the COVID thing, your turnaround will be quick, because
very
COVID
quick.
is time sensitive. Yeah,
Very
okay.
quick.
Thank you. I just wanted to just put it out there for you folks. And in terms of, are there any questions that you want to ask? You know what I do when I shoot films? I always ask my crew, especially if I'm shooting someone powerful or important. I always ask my crew to ask questions that I might have forgotten. So I am going to throw this off the wall. Are there any questions that you think maybe someone here would answer? Ashley, do you want to ask MAMAPONYA something, or Yolanda, or whatever? Let's just throw it out there. Any takers?
It's more of a comment on Yolanda's film. One of the things that struck me in Yolanda's film, this is one of the moments that stayed with me, when Deborah, I think it was Deborah, was telling the young little girls about makeup and how important it is. And she said something about, if you don't want to do it, stay at home. But this is how things work here. And I was like, oh wow, are we still saying that? With the revolution that has been going on about beauty standards and whatnot, are we still saying to young girls, listen, if you haven't painted over your eyebrows, you are not looking presentable?
Let's be quick, please.
So that's just a comment.
So to give context to that moment, I actually cut straight after that. There was another part where Michael tells his couple, the kids that he's teaching, that you better make sure your lipstick is on straight. You better make sure nothing's running. He's actually emphasizing also the makeup thing. And what I've seen in that world, how you present yourself is like very, very important. And I think the thing is with as a Black person, as a Black female, and her and how she grew up in the dance world, there's so little room for error. There really is. And I think that's why I put so much time into the projects that I do. You have to kind of almost enter in at level 10. You can't kind of offer something that's kind of half-baked and such, because the competition is so rife, and also you're judged so harshly, a lot more harshly than maybe your male counterparts, more than your white counterparts. So for me, everything I heard her say was, if you're going to go into the dance floor, make sure you are stepping in there level 10. Like there must be absolutely nothing that someone else can say, oh, local lipstick and. So yeah.
Ashleigh, any question to maybe Yolanda or to our NFVF sister here?
Well, I do actually want to just comment on, to go on the comment MAMAPONYA just said. I also found that bit really interesting because it also just speaks to this whole idea of like performing your life. I just think that's so interesting with dancers those gorgeous kids, and that they're starting with this idea from so young that you literally are performing your whole life. I thought that was so interesting that when the one lady says you always have to, dancers just do this. Whenever you leave your wherever they are, even they go to the beach, they're fully dressed up. And I'm just, in general, I love this idea of how people perform themselves. It's so interesting in all these different facets of life.
Last question for all of you. Okay, no, sorry, you want to say something?
Okay, so the comment I was going to make was, as you were describing your male and female character, Ashleigh, and also MAMAPONYA about Ernie, I was like, actually, what makes the docus so great are just, they've got these really compelling characters. And I think that's the key to creating a really strong documentary, having a subject or a person who really has an interesting story to tell. And I think all of the documentaries had indeed people who indeed have a story to tell that, in a compelling way also.
Okay, before I ask 30 seconds, before I carry on, I just needed to say this. I forgot to say this. DFA, Documentary Filmmakers Association, actually funded short documentaries that are going to be shown at encounters where people were given money to just go and do whatever it is that they wanted to do during this time, and please look out for them. Yolanda, what are your hopes and dreams? Because you work a lot with filmmakers, but you are on the funding side. And if you had a wish, which I'm sure you do, what is your wish, your dream? This, our sister from NFVF.
Yeah, I think for me, I would like to work more with women. I want to see women, like being more daring, and when like coming into our doors and being able to apply. But on a personal level, I think I really love women's stories. Like I was saying, that there's a different tone when we tell stories. So I want to see more stories that have female characters.
MAMAPONYA, what's your dream, my dear?
Well, firstly, I want to say to Yolanda, expect me to be knocking at your door.
And I'll help you as much as I possibly can, and I really will, because I do. So go for it.
Okay, I don't know. Were you speaking about Yolanda Rumba or Yolanda NFVF?
Oh, whoops.
Yolanda says she wants women to be knocking on their doors.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yes.
We need to wrap up. To wrap up. Quick one. But what's your dream?
For me, more stories about marginalized women in our societies.
Yolanda Rumba. Yolanda.
My dream is to get to Hollywood and tell African stories myself.
From your lips to God's ears.
Oh,
Ashleigh.
I like what Yolanda O said about trying to take riskier perspectives. I hope to try and do that with the stories that I tell in the future, which I have no idea what it'll be yet, but I'm excited for that next chapter.
My dream is, there is this beautiful, beautiful line in Lauryn Hill's song where she says, if I rule the world, I'll take all the boys and girls. I love it. Okay, my dream is for all of you fabulous women and other fabulous women to really, really just claim your space in the sun, women. No one is going to give it to you. Grab it. Take it, even if you have to go boof, boof, because I'm known as a fighter. Yolanda can tell you, and I'm not ashamed of that. Take it, and run as fast as the wind will take you. That's my dream for all of you young women. Claim your space in the sun. Take it. No one is going to give it to you. And run. Run as fast as the wind will take you. That's my dream for all of you.
Thank you.
Love that.
Okay.
Because it's true, we all deserve the most. Honestly, we all do.
And you're amazing. You are amazing, beautiful, young, talented in this time. And don't buy into this thing of, opportunities are not there. No, if they are not there, create them and never take no for an answer. Just keep going. And if you have to fight to whatever to get what you want, go ahead and fight. Yolanda, this Yolanda at the NFVF, she knows I fight, but know when to choose your battles.
Yeah, very
Don't
true.
just fight. Know when to choose your battles, but fight because.
Sorry.
No, carry on.
No, I was going to say, it does help to have allies, though. It really does help. If you have a mentor, that's great. If you have someone who you can do this with instead of fighting by yourself, it really does.
My sweetheart, when I started working in the film industry, I'd be the only Black person on the production. You know what I mean? This was my first, I was a receptionist on the Cecil John Rhodes film. I was the only Black person in the office. And white people would come into the office, they wouldn't see me because that was their way of invisibilizing me.
Yeah.
And I would go to the toilet and I would cry and cry. And there were beautiful white people. Laura Lee Yowat and Krista Schamberger used to say to me, keep at it. One day you'll be somewhere. One day you'll be somewhere. So you guys are coming in when things are so much easier. But you have to, because the battles, everything reinvents itself. So you have to just keep going. And Richard Green, God bless his soul, he was my first mentor when I was very young, when I wanted to be a producer. He was doing those Mnet things. And I said, Latabele Masemola Jones was the executive producer and she put me on to Richard Green and I've never looked back. And I'll meet you at the Oscars, girls, because
we'll meet you
I've got BAFTAs. So the next step is the Oscars. That's it.
Meet you at the Oscars.
No, but I've got 2 BAFTAs. So a BAFTA is just as good as an Oscar. Yeah. So all I'm saying is the next step is the Oscars. So I'll see you at the Oscars. If it's not me, it will be one of you.
Yeah. Why not?
Okay.
Yes, why not?
No, it was lovely. It was lovely.
It was really great to be on the panel. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to Encounters. Thank you also to NFVF for all the work you're doing. Don't worry, we see it and I see it personally.
No, I see it. I see it. Power to you guys. I see it. And that's why it was important to mention the work that you are doing. I see it. I am behind it. NFVF, KwaZulu-Natal, DTI, Department of Arts and Culture. I see it, and I applaud you and I viva you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. It was a great show. Bye.
Bye. Lovely. Thank you.
Woo, thank you. Oh, it's not recording now. Okay. Oh, everyone's gone. Okay. It was lovely chatting.
Everybody's gone.
Oh, how many are they all? They left.
They rushed off.
Yeah. Woo.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. I wish the other ladies were still here, but they're gone. Thank you so much. That was such an interesting discussion.
Yeah, it was actually, it really was packed. And you felt like there was still more to kind of, I see why KOLISWA wanted to just pump everything in there.
I know, she was high energy, I know. Ooh. And we still had a lot of questions on Facebook and questions on the Q&A. We just couldn't respond to everything, but it was an amazing discussion. And I was just thinking to myself, we should do this like every month or bi-monthly, just get together and have these discussions as women, you know?
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
So that would be amazing. Love to do it again.
Yeah. Congratulations to you both on the films. It's a real privilege to have you on our program. I think your films, your films are on the program because they were the best from